that, no, I forget where I was going with that. Crap. I had a thought, and I think it was brilliant, but it is fully left me now. There's your outtake for the episode.
Bringing you law, gospel, and guns. Welcome to Armed Lutheran Radio.
Hi folks, welcome to Armed Lutheran Radio, a show about guns, hunting, competitive shooting, the natural right of self-defense, and what God's Word says about the issues surrounding gun rights and gun ownership. I'm your host, Lloyd Bailey, the Armed Lutheran, and this is episode number 144, brought to you again by Cook's Holsters, American-made custom Kydex holsters with a lifetime warranty and a 100% satisfaction guarantee. CooksHolsters.com. Use the promo code ARMEDPODCAST, that's all one word, ARMEDPODCAST, and when you order at cooksholsters.com, you will get a 15% discount off your order. Again, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for making Armed Lutheran Radio a part of your day and a part of your week. We really do appreciate it. This is the first episode after the 2018 midterms, and as you probably know, Republicans held the Senate. Democrats narrowly retook the House. The losses by Republicans were historically low for the party in power. Less than 30 seats changed hands, and the GOP added to their majority in the Senate. So some would say that's actually a good thing, because the Senate is where all of the power is, and as far as the kinds of things that Democrats would like to do, like impeach the president or impede some of his nominations, all that stuff gets approved in the Senate, so not going to happen. What the heck is going on in Florida? Elections in Florida are just a dumpster fire. Seems like every time we have an election in Florida, something is wrong. The Democrat losers in Florida somehow miraculously found trucks full of ballots, and they've called for a recount, and the lady in charge of the recount, I think, was convicted at one point of voter fraud. The attorney overseeing the recount is none other than the partisan hack who was peddling the whole, Trump Russian hooker golden shower story, so it should be a totally fair process. Florida is to elections what Florida man is to stupid criminals. And once again, it's Broward County that's at the center of it. This is the same county whose corrupt politicians gave us the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas high school shooting, the school safety policies that led to that mass shooting. And of course, we've had another mass shooting in California, and it's still within the. I like John Correa's 72-hour rule. I don't know enough yet to really comment on it, so we'll talk about that in a future episode. But back to Florida. What in the world? It's the 21st century, people. Why is it we're still using paper ballots? It makes no sense. I mean, what the actual hell is the problem with our electoral system that in the 21st century we're still using paper ballots? Anyway, the media is predictably calling this a huge victory for Democrats, despite the fact that it's really not, and despite the fact that on election night they were crying about how there was no blue wave. It turned out to be more like a blue mist. In every single contested race where celebrities and former President Obama went out and campaigned, whether it was Bredesen in Tennessee or Abrams in Georgia or fake Mexican here in Texas or Gillum in Florida, every single one of them lost. Many of the House seats that the Republicans lost were actually traditionally Democrat districts that kind of got fed up with Obama and turned temporarily red. So it's not like those were major flips. And every senator in a contested election who voted against Brett Kavanaugh got kicked to the curb. Every single one of them. And there was really a lot to be happy about. It didn't turn into a red wave, but there was no blue wave. So it was really good news for Republicans. And as soon as they were declared the winners, Democrats predictably made it clear that their priorities are not our priorities. They're going to do nothing but investigate the president and obstruct for the next 2 years. That is it. They're virtually guaranteeing that Trump is going to get reelected in 2020 because the Democrats are the gift that keeps on giving. But there's still a lot to worry about. So what does this mean for the future? Well, many of my libertarian friends are saying this is actually a good turnout because divided government means gridlock, and gridlock means nothing gets passed. No new infringements, no new laws, no new taxes. But it also means things like no new budget. It means no movement on things that really do need to get done. We need to finish the wall, but divided government means there's no way to fund it unless there are major concessions by the GOP. And given Trump's political ideology, Trump is not really ideological, so it's very possible that he could make a deal that would compromise something else that we care about. It means that we're going to waste millions of dollars in pointless investigations, and I would bet an attempted impeachment. It means we're not going to see any future tax cuts for the next 2 years. It means I can guarantee you we're going to see multiple attempts at major gun control legislation coming out of the House, probably up to and including things like confiscation. And most of those things are going to die in committee in the Senate, or they may, in an act of fairness, they might get to the floor of the Senate and have a chance to pass. And with the latest shooting in California, like I mentioned, we can bet that that's going to be high on the agenda for Democrats and the new Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. That's probably who's going to be leading the Democrats in the House come January 20. Gun control groups complain about NRA spending on elections, but groups like Giffords outspent the NRA by factors of 10 in some races. What this all means is that we're going to have to wait 2 more years to make any progress in rolling back the crap that Obama did. And worse yet, given that Trump is a deal maker and he's not an ideologue, we may see him make some deals with Democrats that undermine our rights and go against our values. Or Trump may go the Obama route and start doing things by executive order. Now, that was bad when Obama did it. It's bad if Trump does it too. It would be fun to see him threaten it, though, just to see the liberal heads explode. But I'm not crazy about the idea of him taking the law into his own hands, with the cell phone and the pen, just like Obama said. Whatever happens, though, we need to keep our elected officials in our prayers, whether we voted for them or not. We need to pray that they serve honorably, that they treat all citizens equally with equity and compassion, that they make wise and fruitful decisions on behalf of all citizens. Even as we become more and more divided, we should still pray for unity. After Trump, I really thought that they would moderate their approach to try to appeal to more people, but they've done nothing but go as far left as they can possibly go and divide as much as they possibly can. And I expect that to continue, but that doesn't mean that we should stop praying. I'm not counting on any of those kinds of things like good governance or honorable service or equity or compassion. I don't expect any of that to come out of the Democrat-run House, but I'm going to be praying nonetheless, and I hope you will be too. All right, what do we got on the agenda for today? We've got a new tip from Mia. We've got something special from Sergeant Bill after a couple of weeks off. And in Clinging to God and Guns today, Pastor Bennett and I will be looking at the question of immigration and illegal immigration and what the Bible says on that subject with the caravans coming north and working their way through Mexico, headed for our border and threatening to violate en masse our immigration laws. How should we as Christians think about the issue of the plight of migrants and the obligation of government to protect its citizens? All that is coming your way in just a few moments. But first, let's talk about buying guns. Everyone likes to buy guns, right? I know I do. And when my wife asks, well, how many guns do you need? I always make sure to tell her just one more. Well, my favorite place to buy guns is G4G Guns. It's an amazing store owned by two really amazing people, Cassie and Patrick Coburn. You've heard them on the show before. They have a really cool website where you can shop for any gun, for ammunition, for accessories, from the comfort of your own home. And you can buy without any gimmicks and no hidden fees. You don't have to be a member to get a special price, no fees for credit cards. The price you see is the price you pay. Great people, great service, great prices, amazing selection, no hidden fees or gimmicks. Check them out at g4gguns.com. That's G, the number 4, G, guns.com. And tell them you heard about it on Armed Lutheran Radio. Serving the gun buying community since 2013, G4G Guns is the galaxy for great guns. G4gguns.com.
Up next, it's Mia's Motivations with Mia and Sgt.
Last week, I talked to you and I told you that I was headed out on a hunting trip, and I did head out on a deer hunt in New Mexico. It was a fun hunt. However, I didn't shoot a deer, but I also spent some time with my husband, and time in the woods is super good quality time. I wanted to talk to you guys this week about quality time in the woods because while we were out there, we received a message from a friend that was hunting in Texas with his son. And the son is hunted before. I actually sat through his hunter education class with him several years ago. And now I thought they were going to be taking the younger sister to attend on the hunt. Maybe not to hunt herself or to hunt herself. But something about this is, even if the child is not going to hunt, and husbands or men, if you have a girlfriend, you can take your significant other or a child or even a friend along on a hunt. Take them with you, let them see the hunt. And what happened with this family is the son has been on the hunts with his dad over the years. The daughter has not, so she doesn't understand hunting yet. And the son shot an animal, and the dad said that he wasn't sure where the son hit it, stuff like that. So something that I take for granted, because I've been tagging along on hunts since I was a little child, maybe 2 or 3 years old. My dad and parents took me on hunts. But I learned a lot then, because even though I wasn't the hunter, I was spotting animals. I was tracking the shot. I was seeing where the bullet impacted the animal. I was seeing this stuff, and I learned a lot before I was ever even handling firearms, before I was ever even considering being the hunter myself. So this is something, if you have somebody who thinks maybe that they would like to get started hunting, how about taking them along with you on the hunt? I've had several parents, oh my gosh, but, little Johnny or little Becky, they make too much noise. They can't sit still long enough. They can't do this or that. And what that is that's making excuses. And here recently, with what's going on in our country, I've heard so much about kids are terrible nowadays. Kids are bad. And the kids nowadays are rotten. And I think that's a cop-out, because what's going on is the parenting has gone bad. You have to look at the parents. Children are a reflection of their parents, and parents aren't spending time with their kids, and they're making these excuses. Oh, well, they're going to ruin this for me. Well, you know what? If you take a child with you to a restaurant, they will learn how to behave in a restaurant. If you only go out to eat and you hire a babysitter to watch your children, they are never going to learn how to behave in a public place. So if you want your children to learn how to hunt, take them with you. Teach them. So what if they scare the deer away one time? After the deer's gone, teach them and explain to them, hey, you wiggled and the deer saw you, that's why it ran away. Those are learning experiences. They're teaching opportunities. They are times where you can bond. You can learn so much there. And instead of relying on someone else to teach the children, you can teach them yourself. In the same note, maybe a wife or a girlfriend, hey, ladies, I have some lady friends that hunt that aren't married, and maybe they could take a boyfriend and teach them something about hunting. You can always do this. It's a great way to be in the outdoors. If you don't spend time in the outdoors, you need to, because it is a great place to connect with nature, to connect with God's creation, to see what's out there. And being outside, if you ask any doctor, you need to relieve your stress, get outside. Go see what's out there. Look at the birds, look at the bugs. If you're afraid of spiders, maybe you need to carry something with you to smash the spider. It's a lot of fun. You can learn, explore, and have a great time. Don't leave the children behind. If you're a parent, find a way, make them comfortable, teach them, let them have fun. Maybe you can take them on Saturday and have a short hunt, and then on Sunday you can go and have your time and hunt the whole day. I wanted to let you guys know that if you start when they're young, they have less to learn when they get older, and maybe they'll become interested in what you've got going on, and they will appreciate you so much more for sharing that with them. Until next week, have a great one. Bye, guys.
You can read more from Mia and watch her YouTube videos at miaandstein.com.
Hey guys, it's Mia here. If you follow me on social media, you know that I often share morning inspiration. Many people ask how I can keep this up every day. Well, it starts with my morning readings and that perfect cup of coffee. The official Dunkin' Donuts shop provides coffee lovers with everything they need, from K-Cup pods, original blended coffee, tea, drinkware, and more. Who doesn't want Dunkin' delivered to their front door? Shop today at www.armedlutheran.us/coffee and help support Armed Lutheran Radio today.
I want to take a minute here to thank our partner, the Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network. If you're involved in a situation where you have to use your firearm in self-defense, you very well may find yourself in a legal battle against overzealous prosecutors or the families of the criminal who you shot or threatened, who are looking to deprive you of your freedom or your hard-earned savings. You may find yourself charged with a crime or facing a civil lawsuit even if you did nothing wrong. That's where Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network comes in. For a small yearly fee, they will provide you with money for attorneys, money for bail, consultations, and access to experts like Marty Hayes and Masad Ayub. Don't face the fight alone. Visit Armed Citizens Network today. Use the promo code ARMEDLutheran-25. Save $25 off your first year's membership, or you can grab the coupon on my website, armedlutheran.us. Sign up today. They will send you lots of cool resources, 8 instructional DVDs, and a book by Masad Ayub that I cannot recommend highly enough. Don't wait until you need their help. Be prepared. Sign up today. Visit armedcitizensnetwork.org.
Time now for another Ballistic Minute with Sergeant Bill Sylvia.
Hey everybody, I'm Sergeant Bill, and this is your Ballistic Minute. So I've been trying to figure out a way that we can help Mr. Lloyd with his non-threat problem. And in talking to my folks who are in bowling leagues, I'm kind of stealing an idea from them for their bowling league. So the basis of it is what they do is when they're bowling, whoever, misses a spare or something like that, they, get a card, and whoever has the most cards at the end of the league day has to buy drinks or snacks or dinner for the next time that they meet for their league. So I'm going to kind of steal that idea, and I think this would be kind of neat. So if you have a group of buddies that you shoot with, whether it's local club matches or sanctioned matches, what you can do is whoever shoots the non-threats, or if everybody shoots a non-threat, whoever shoots the most non-threats gets to buy either beverages or snacks or something for the next match that you show up at. So it's sort of a penalty system that's not really penalties. It's kind of fun. So who's going to shoot the least number of non-threats? Or you could do penalties too. Anything that's fun that you can incorporate into your shooting with the people you shoot with to have more fun. You can even do an idea that I've seen recently where they did a pro-am. And even though it wouldn't be, in the rules, I guess, or awarded, you could say you had several different buddies, you could pair off and each of y'all combine your scores to see who wins your team match. And loser buys drinks or cigars or something. I don't know. I don't know. If you got any ideas, email us and let us know. I'm Sergeant Bill. This has been your Ballistic Minute.
Sergeant Bill Sylvia is a veteran of the Dallas Police Department and masterclass competitive shooter. You can watch Sergeant Bill's shooting videos at armedlutheran.us/Sergeant Bill.
Hey there, this is Sergeant Bill. After the successful completion of a match, Lloyd and I like to get together and top it off with a celebratory cigar. We get our post-match cigars from Cigar Page, home of America's best cigar deals. Visit armedlutheran.us/cigar and get a great deal. And also, help support Armed Lutheran Radio.
Let me take a moment to tell you about our good friends at cooksholsters.com. Not only are they a sponsor of the show and the Armed Lutheran Radio shooting team, they're a company that I trust and believe in. Why? Well, when I first got into concealed carry, when I got my concealed carry permit, it was really amazing how much I didn't know. I picked up a holster from my local range, one of those cheap prophylactic holsters, you know the kind. They collapse when you take the gun out. You can't reholster them safely. I have to admit, I was one of those guys. When I started learning more and taking classes and reading and watching videos, I found out that there are better holsters out there. I learned about the advantage of Kydex holsters, and that's how I discovered Cook's Holsters. What makes Cook so special as opposed to other holster makers? They make an outstanding product. They sell printed Kydex to many of the other holster makers, and their subsidiary business, Cook's Molds, actually makes the molds that other holster manufacturers use. Cook's Holsters is an American success story. Born in the founder's basement, Cook's Holsters grew so much that Mr. Cook left his job to make holsters full time, and he hired people to help fill orders and meet demand. Custom molded to fit your firearm, Cook's Holsters are available in a wide array of colors and printed patterns, including your own artwork. They're available for carry, for range work, and for competition. Check them out at cooksholsters.com. They're adding new gun models every month. I trust them for everyday carry and for competition. Visit them today. Use the promo code ARMEDPODCAST and save 15% off your order. They offer a lifetime warranty and a 100% money-back guarantee if you're not satisfied. Check them out at cooksholsters.com.
Up next, we're clinging to God and Guns with Pastor John Bennett.
Welcome back to Armed Lutheran Radio. Time now for Clinging to God and Guns with our good friend, the pastor from St. John's Lutheran Church in Willow Creek, Minnesota, John Bennett. Pastor, welcome back.
Thank you, Lord. As always, it is a joy and a pleasure.
This week's episode, we're looking at the subject of immigration, specifically illegal immigration, and how God's Word can inform our opinions on the subject, because we are often seeing one side using scripture to support their position in the debate. And Pastor Bennett even found, since we were last discussing this, found an article on the other side. As we record, of course, so we've just finished up the 2018 midterms, and there are still these migrant caravans marching through Mexico from places like Guatemala. The president has sent U.S. troops to the southern border, and recently, I think a couple of weeks ago, former Ohio governor and former GOP presidential candidate John Kasich weighed in on this issue in true rhino fashion on CNN. He's basically taken John McCain's place as the left's favorite Republican because he is willing to say anything bad about Republicans and particularly Trump.
Right, and he's too naive to realize that the left just sees him as another useful idiot.
Yes, exactly, because if he had actually won the primaries and had beaten Hillary, they would be calling him Hitler.
Right. Yeah, thank God he didn't win the primary. But I'm still, if it hadn't been for him and Rubio trying to hang on, we might have had Ted Cruz as our president right now.
That's true. Yeah. So not one of my favorite Republicans. He's made a habit lately of appearing on CNN, which has become basically left of MSNBC since the 2016 election. And he was on Newsroom, the program called Newsroom, a couple of weeks ago, and he had this to say about the caravan coming north.
Here's what bothers me. We have a caravan coming north. We don't want all those people coming across our border. And there are ways to deal with it. I believe that if we would check those who are legitimately in need of asylum, could be vetted before they even get to the border. But you know what? We're born in America. You know how lucky we are to be born in America and not be born in Guatemala, where they would say to your daughter, if you don't do what we want, we will rape your daughter or we will kill your son if he's not a drug mule. Now, they're marching north. And you know what? It could easily have been all of us, that we're in the caravan, that we're marching north, trying to save our families and save our children.
He was going in the right direction at the beginning, I think. But then he got off track with the whole guilt trip about how good we have it.
Yeah, he was going right, and then he took a sharp turn off onto stupid lane.
Right. It's like his mind suddenly realized, hey, you sound like a Republican. We need to shift gears. We're on CNN. We shouldn't be talking like this.
Yeah. Here's the thing, and this is going to try so hard not to be overly political here, but it's going to be almost impossible at this point. Let's be real about something for a minute. You don't get thousands of people who suddenly one day all decide, you know what, I'm going to march towards the United States to make a better life for myself and my family. This is something that was well coordinated and well funded.
Yeah, this struck me as, I'm not a conspiracy theory guy, so I don't know where this all comes from, but it's odd that all these migrants decided to do it at the same time and joined together, and then they've got trucks helping them, and they refuse the offers from the Mexican government for asylum there, and then another one starts from another country and another one from another country. Where, how do you have the logistical support if you're fleeing a country that's war torn and has gang and drug violence nonstop, and you're destitute? How do you have the logistical support to travel thousands of miles for a better life? And how is it that all of those people decided to do it spontaneously at the same time? It just seems a little too much of a coincidence for me.
Well, one of the organizations that's providing a lot of support for them is this People Without Borders organization. I can't remember what the name of the organization is in Spanish, but because they go by their Spanish name, oddly enough.
Kind of like Beto.
Yes. And there is a Catholic charity organization that contributes heavily to this People Without Borders organization, and that Catholic charity happens to be heavily funded by George Soros.
Gotcha.
No surprises there.
Right.
He, being a radical atheist, only supports religious organizations if it meets his agenda.
Right, because the idea, the suggestion that Soros is behind a lot of these things, it's his support for leftist politics, and he knows basically that, as does the Democrat Party, that if you get more and more of these people into the country, it's easier and easier to have them voting, and to create a block of voters in the future by promising them things and giving them stuff and saying, oh, those mean old rascally Republicans wouldn't let you in the country, but we did. And that's how you overturn Republican governance. You basically flood the country with a bunch of people who are unaccountable and unaccounted for, and give them bennies and once they get here, so that they vote a certain way. And then you, as we saw here in Texas, you make it possible for those people to vote. We've uncovered voter fraud on a rather wide scale, and much of it is a result of DACA recipients. So it's all part of the idea of illegal immigration, and the support for it on the left is really about electoral politics.
Yes.
So next, our noted theologian John Kasich decides to opine about the biblical support for illegal immigrants.
We've got to start putting ourselves in the shoes of other people. We've got to start thinking about the consequences that others suffer. And if we've been spared those by the grace of God, let us be appreciative. Let us count our blessings, and let us reach out to those who have less. And let's stop putting up walls around ourselves and not understanding the plight, the trouble, and the problems of others. It is not right, and the Lord doesn't want it. And our people, at their hearts, want to reach out to others. Look at what they do in these storms. They go and they rescue people they don't know. They put them in their homes. They feed them. That's America. Not all this garbage and this division and yelling and screaming and hatred on all sides.
He's kind of yelling and screaming right there, isn't he?
I started to say, he was getting pretty animated there. So God doesn't want us to have borders. He wants us to take these immigrants into our homes. I would suggest that John start by inviting some of these unvetted immigrants into his house and show us by example. But,
right.
But first off, John Kasich is full of crap here. He's suggesting that because we want border security and we don't understand or care about the plight of people in need.
Well, I guess when God commanded Nehemiah to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem, that, Nehemiah was actually schizophrenic and was just hearing voices of demons or something.
Right. Well, we know now, it wasn't apparent at first, but there have been reports there are gang members among the caravan. We've got formerly deported murderers. We have bad people in these caravans. And there's another caravan that broke down the border fence between Guatemala and Mexico, and some of them were armed and they were firing on Mexican border police. That's what's coming to our border. These aren't all helpless migrants.
Right. Yeah. If there are women and children in that group that are absolutely destitute and they're fleeing deplorable circumstances in Guatemala, I feel for you. Mm-hmm. Perhaps the best course of action wasn't to try and travel several thousand miles across desert wasteland, but to go to the consulate and request asylum. That would have been the legal process. They've identified upwards of 300 of people in this group that are formerly deported for criminal activity. So, to say that these are all people just simply seeking a better life, they're fleeing from circumstances because they don't want their daughters raped by the drug cartel or their sons forced to be drug mules. There's no evidence that is the group of people that are coming toward our borders. Right.
And that's where he was going initially, talking about vetting people and trying to figure out, who they are. He was on the right track there at the beginning. We do want to help people in need and those who come seeking asylum legally. And we need to be able to find a way to separate the bad from the good and bring those people in who are truly seeking asylum and truly are destitute, and not these gang members and people who are just here to leech off the system.
Right.
But in addition to wanting us to love our neighbors, God commands us to be subject to the ruling authorities. So firing on border police and storming a country's border fence and tearing down their walls, and that's not subject to being subject to the ruling authorities, is it? I mean,
not really, and the argument that's being made, and it's so ironic that they're actually trying to file a lawsuit against the United States government for their right to enter the country illegally. Their right, I can't even believe I'm saying that, their right to break the law. But if things sucked so bad in Guatemala, where they're trying to come from, and I'm sure was it Guatemala or Honduras?
Both.
Yeah. If things are so terrible and they were trying to leave those countries to come to the United States to immigrate to this country, why would they be marching through Mexico, waving flags of their native countries that supposedly suck so bad?
Right.
Well, and it speaks to a larger issue with immigration. And I said I wasn't going to get overly political, but, screw that. That the immigration, the problem with immigration in our country is there has not been a focus on assimilation.
Yes.
And because of that, yes, we should, celebrate these cultures. I love Mexican food just as much as the next person. But
I want to appropriate me some Mexican food.
At the same time, there is something unique about the American way of life, where it's about integrating their cultures into the larger picture of what it means to be an American, where you have, when people immigrated here from places like from Ireland, from Italy, they immigrated. Yes, they brought a piece of their culture here, but they took the trouble to learn their language. They took the trouble, even though they did have their little niches within different neighborhoods and whatnot, they took the trouble to become a part of the greater society rather than to seclude themselves and try to be a nation within a nation.
Yep.
We need to work on assimilation, and that's not happening. We have a problem. I shouldn't say a problem because that sounds terribly xenophobic. There is an issue within Minnesota with a large number of Somali quote unquote refugees coming here to the United States and settling in Minnesota. There was a big issue where there was up in a public school up in the Twin Cities area where they were permitted to have a dedicated prayer room so that they can do their Muslim prayers facing Mecca, all that during the school day.
Mm-hmm.
But Christians were not afforded the opportunity to celebrate their faith on campus.
Well, and it's funny you would bring up the Somali immigrants. Is we've just completed the 2018 midterms. You've got a new congressperson from Minnesota who violated, apparently there are allegations that she violated immigration law in order to gain citizenship, and now she's a member of Congress. So
yeah, how lovely is that? And she is as anti-Semite as the day is long.
Yes. Yep. So we used to be a melting pot. It used to be that people came here because they wanted to be American. Now they just want to be whatever they were and take advantage of the benefits of living in America.
Yeah, now it's more like a 7-layer dip where each layer is vying for that top spot.
Right. So as we sort of transition from the political, let's look at how should we be thinking about immigration from a Christian perspective, not as Republicans, not as Democrats, not as conservatives or liberals, but as Christians. What does the Bible say about immigrants and immigration?
Well, we have, in the Old Testament, it talks about caring for the sojourner, caring for the alien, the person in your midst who is not a part of your nation.
Mm-hmm. And
we have the command to love our neighbor as ourselves. And, we have the example of the parable of the Good Samaritan where, this is someone who was not of your nation, who would have been, politically, religiously at odds with you, but that is the one who showed mercy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we are to care about them. We are to care about their plight. We should be remembering in our prayers those who are destitute. So pray for those that are among that group that are destitute, that are, intending to be law-abiding, that are simply seeking a better life. Because among this several thousand group of people, there has to be at least some in there who are trying to find a better life for themselves. So pray for them, because their life sucks so much that this is what they're willing to do to try to make a better life for themselves. We aren't to take the stance of this knucklehead did over at pulpitandpen.org. That the title of the article is "The Biblical Answer to Migrant Care Ban is Bombs and Bullets." No, no. The closing paragraph of that article reads, 7,000 active duty troops are headed to the Mexico border to protect American lives and property from approximately 7,000 foreign invaders, mostly adult men, who are intent on disobeying our laws and disrespecting our national sovereignty. A careful analysis of Christian ethics, and I don't understand what his analysis can even conclude this, that it is the full prerogative of our military to use deadly force after giving them every possible warning that a step across our border will be their first step into the world to come. So the blanket argument is, if they step 1 foot across that border, I'm going to shoot you. Is that the take that we are to have as Christians? Yes, we are a nation of laws. Yes, we are a nation of borders, even though those borders, yes, I wish there was a divider between us and our neighbors to the south, the size of the Great Wall of China. But we don't have that. This doesn't mean that we are to simply shoot anyone who would step foot into our country. Mm-hmm. In the same way, yep. Somebody knocks on your door and you don't know them and they try to step into your house, your first response shouldn't be, "Now I'm going to shoot you." So, yeah, to refer to them as foreign invaders, one could make that argument, and perhaps that is an accurate way to put it. But to have the attitude that kill them all and let God sort them out, that is not the Christian ethic. No. The Christian ethic is to respond first with love and compassion, while at the same time upholding the rule of law. And the rule of law doesn't say simply shoot somebody because they step foot into our country.
Right.
Now, it's a different case if they're armed. There's been reports that they are making Molotov cocktails as they're progressing towards our border. If you're trying to come into our country peacefully, but you're making Molotov cocktails, you're not trying to come into our country peacefully.
Right.
If they are posing a lethal threat to those who are being stationed along the border, then yes, you have to respond with equal force. But to sit there and say that, you come into our country, we kill you.
Right.
That is not the Christian ethic.
No, not at all. And let's look at some of these passages. I pulled a few out, and from the Old Testament, where they're talking about, like in Leviticus 19, you've got this reference to, strangers who sojourn with you in your land. You shouldn't treat them wrong. Exodus 22 and 23 talks about not oppressing the sojourner. Malachi 3 talks about sojourners, that the Lord will be swift against people who thrust aside the sojourner. Deuteronomy and Jeremiah and Leviticus also have references to this. In the Old Testament, though, a sojourner is not somebody who's coming to live in your land permanently. It's somebody who's traveling through.
Right.
And the command is that you shouldn't oppress them. You shouldn't treat them badly. But doesn't illegal immigration make it possible and make it more likely that those people are going to be mistreated when they sneak in here?
Yeah, it's one of those cases where they are reaping what they are sowing if they are to face any mistreatment. I certainly don't wish any that are peaceful, decent human beings to be oppressed in any way. At the same time, it would be great if our nation would reform its laws and simply say that if you have come here illegally, neither you nor your children will receive 1 penny in government aid, whether it's healthcare to education and everything in between. You cannot have a fluid border and have a generous welfare system at the same time. The two cannot coexist.
Right.
And do so for a long period of time. So, that's the major draw for these people, is that coming to the United States and you can get a buttload of things that you didn't get in the country you came from.
Right.
A large percentage of people immigrating from Muslim countries, 69% of those immigrating from Muslim majority countries, they're going right on the food stamps roll. So, yes, there is a motivation for these people to come here. And for those who are going to come here and try to do so, even if they're trying to do it illegally, that their goal is to not cause anyone harm and simply try to make a better life for themselves. We do not have a right to mistreat them. There are people who have come here, and even if they've come here illegally, that they are in a very difficult position in their lives, and a little bit of mercy can go a long way to helping improve their situation in life. But we are in no way to mistreat them.
Absolutely. And sadly, like you said, they're in a tough position, because if they are mistreated, who are they going to report that mistreatment to? Because by reporting it, they are essentially exposing themselves to potential deportation.
Right. We have this fluid border. We have made it easy for them to get into this country. We have given them the opportunity of having access to these different welfare programs. And then they come here, and then things fall apart, and they're destitute. And in some ways, they're no better off than they were before they came here.
Let's go there for a second, because let's make a bit of a distinction, because we've got these migrants who are coming in, and yes, we shouldn't, as individuals and as business people, as neighbors, we shouldn't be mistreating them. But one side, one political party particularly, is vehemently opposed to the enforcement of our immigration laws. They want ICE abolished. They've called ICE essentially Nazis and racists. And we have these cities that basically refuse to enforce immigration laws and harbor illegal aliens. Is it oppressing the migrant to subject them to the laws of the land? As Romans 13 and 1 Peter 2 talk about, being subject to the ruling authorities and to human institutions. Are we oppressing them? Are we mistreating them by expecting that they should be, that the laws of the land should be upheld?
That is a tough question. One could make the argument either way. It would be a different scenario if it wasn't for the fact that there's a large amount of tax dollars that go to support those who enter into our country illegally. The number is in the hundreds of billions of dollars annually that is spent on various welfare programs, education, healthcare, and the prison system for those who have come into our country illegally. So from one perspective, you are saying by permitting them to be here without any repercussions that it is essentially theft for those who work hard and pay their taxes.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, you can say that, we've allowed them to come into this country, and that's not really the best way to put it. But
right.
If you've seen our border and seen how many holes there are in that border, by not doing anything about our border, we are making it easy for them to come here. By making it easy for them to come here, and then they get settled here. You have cases where some of them, they've been working for years and they've managed to buy homes and everything else, and then to say, sorry, you got to go back home. You could certainly say that is oppressive. There needs to be a system to fix this. There needs to be a system that says you voluntarily report yourself, and we will give you a temporary visa. We're going to give you, 6 months to get this figured out. Have some sort of a system that says you can become a permanent resident without the right to vote, that you can stay in this country as long as you're paying taxes and obeying the law and that sort of thing. And we already do have that kind of in place with legal immigration, where you come here, you are on a visa, and if you violate the law, you have to get sent back.
Right. Well, see, that's another thing. Doesn't that seem to show? Some would argue that sort of a blanket amnesty would showing favoritism to those who have broken the law, as opposed to those who actually went through the proper channels and in some cases waited years to become a citizen.
Right. And I absolutely hate it. I hate that I'm actually saying that you've got, people that have built their whole lives here and they've come here illegally. Mm-hmm. That yes, you could say that it is oppressive to them to send them back, but that's the law.
Right.
That's the law. And we have to uphold our laws. And if we don't uphold our laws, it just further incentivizes people to come here and do it illegally.
Right. And you talked about the aspect of providing benefits and the kind of looking at it from the perspective of, we're essentially stealing from our citizens to give to people who came here illegally when we provide them benefits that are taxpayer funded. Doesn't the Bible talk about not showing favoritism either to the rich or to the poor? And isn't it wrong to give benefits to the illegal immigrant rather than the citizen who pays his taxes and is subject to the ruling authorities?
Right. Perfect example. In many states, laws have been passed allowing illegal immigrants to attend college for, at the in-state tuition fee. That, I don't know if it's still the case now, but, when I grew up in California, if you were a California resident, the cost of tuition in-state to a state college was nothing compared to what it was for an out-of-state student. And so you're going to have, say, these people have entered the country illegally, they can pay the same tuition rate as a resident of that state. But, for the person that wants to come to that university who lives in another state, that, they're going to have to pay $20,000 a year in tuition. That is showing favoritism to those who have broken the law over and against those who are citizens and law abiding.
Right. So you mentioned about, we talked a little bit about loving your neighbor and the desire to help and to take care of and not to mistreat our neighbors who just may be migrants from south of the border or from other countries. And there's been some debate about, whether these caravans and whether these immigrants are, just poor asylum seekers escaping violence, or whether some of them are criminals, gang members or terrorists. We don't know, what the makeup of the caravan is. Doesn't love for neighbor require that we don't just open our borders to everyone? Because in doing so, we expose our own citizens, our neighbors who happen to be citizens of the country, to potential crime and that sort of thing.
Absolutely. No, when you consider that within this group, they've identified at least 300 individuals who were formerly deported for committing crimes, some of them including murder. Absolutely, we need to protect our own citizens. And when it comes down to it, I think that's one of the strongest arguments to make against illegal immigration. Yes, we have the financial aspect that they consume tax dollars through various resource programs. But at the end of the day, how many Kate Stenells do we want to have in this country?
Right.
That get killed by an illegal immigrant? That we have those who do come here who are bad people, who do intend to cause harm to others. And so for the protection of our citizens, for the love of our neighbor, who are our literal neighbor, those who live in our communities, who are a part of our communities and a part of our daily lives, then yes, they need to be protected. And we can't be protecting them if we're saying we're going to let all these people come into our country.
And the Kate Steinle murder, that happened in San Francisco, and San Francisco is one of these sanctuary cities. Don't politicians who support and uphold these sanctuary city policies who fail to uphold their duty to protect their own citizens by upholding the law, aren't they failing their neighbor? Aren't they failing to protect their neighbor when they refuse to follow the law and they harbor potentially criminal illegal aliens?
Yeah, you could make the case that Nancy Pelosi aided and abetted in the murder of Kate Steinle. You can make that case because they're the ones who have so adamantly supported the idea that if we have people in our community who are here illegally, we are not going to do anything to aid the federal government in getting them out of our community, to the extent that you have in some areas, you have those who are illegal immigrants who are being released from prison for committing crimes. And you have the sheriff's departments saying that we will not turn these people over to ICE once they've been released from prison, that they're actually releasing these people into their communities. What is wrong with you? Do you not care about the people within your own communities? And, those sheriff's departments, those sheriffs that have that mindset, they ought to strip to protect and serve off of every vehicle in their department.
Well, let me, before we wrap this up, I wanted to throw 3 passages at you and have you respond, because these are some that I've seen used to support or to oppose our immigration laws and to support things like sanctuary city policies and so forth. In Hebrews 13, it talks about neglecting to show hospitality to strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unawares.
Okay, and that passage is a reference to Abraham being visited by 3 men, and that's when he is told that he and his wife will have a child, that child will be the father of many nations and so forth. In that passage, and that's from Genesis, that it's interesting that you have 2 of those 3 go on to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. Abraham refers to only one as Lord. The understanding by theologians is that is the pre-incarnate Christ visiting Abraham and Sarah. Abraham was not aware that he was entertaining angels. So, also what's going on there in Hebrews 13 is talking about our love for one another. To take this in a broader context and applying it to Christian ethics, that the underlying argument here, or I shouldn't say argument, but the underlying instruction here is to be compassionate regardless of the circumstances.
Gotcha.
So we can't simply say, all right, well, because we have this one passage in Hebrews 13, verse 2, that is a reference back to what happened with Abraham and Sarah, that anytime strangers show up to our door, we're to simply say, hey, come on in, sit down, have a bite to eat, stay as long as you'd like. That is not what that passage is telling us.
So then Philippians 3 and 1 Peter 2 talks about how we're not citizens of the world. We're strangers in a strange land. Because we aren't citizens of this world, that our home is actually in heaven. Living in this world is like being an illegal immigrant, I guess.
That passage is simply referring to that as Christians, our focus isn't to be on this life and this world. Our focus is to be on the life that is to come. They take that passage out of context. Our citizenship is in heaven. Because if you look in the preceding verses, he says, brethren, join in following my example and note those who so walk as you have us for a pattern. For many walk, of whom I have told you often, and now tell you even weeping, that they are enemies of the cross of Christ, whose end is destruction, whose God is their belly, and whose glory is in their shame, who set their mind on earthly things. So Paul is contrasting those who engage in a lifestyle that is not consistent with the Christian faith, but is reflective of the secular world. And then he's saying our citizenship is in heaven. But evidently, I guess to liberal SJW Christians, that means, we're to open our doors and set up a tent city in our backyard for illegal immigrants.
Right. The last one I wanted to bring up, I found from an article, a Methodist pastor, Reverend Will Green, who appeared on CNN, and he quoted Matthew 25:43. And Matthew 25:43 is, I was a stranger and you did not welcome me, naked and you did not clothe me, sick and in prison and you did not visit me. How does that apply to immigration? And is he using this appropriately or not?
Yeah, he's not really using it appropriately, but that shouldn't surprise anyone in our audience. That entire passage is talking about Jesus and his second coming.
Mm-hmm.
And he's talking about separating believers from unbelievers, the final judgment. And it says that the righteous will be the ones to whom Jesus will say, I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me drink, and so forth. And to the unrighteous, that Jesus will say, you did not do these things. Here's the key to understanding this passage. In verse 37, Jesus says, then the righteous will answer him, saying, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you drink? When did we see you a stranger and take you in, or naked and clothe you? Or when did we see you sick or in prison and come to you? And the king will answer and say to them, assuredly I say to you, inasmuch as you did it to one of the least of these my brethren, you did it to me. The understanding here is that Christians, we don't do good works to gain God's favor, but our good works flow naturally from faith, that we show compassion to others, not because, everybody's watching. If I don't do a good thing here, they're going to think I'm not a very good Christian. No, it's something that just happens naturally. So we take a look at this passage. No, this passage isn't saying we should welcome in every sad story that wants to come into our country.
Right. The implication that this pastor is trying to make is that by not opening our doors to them, by trying to figure out who is good and who's bad, that we are somehow not loving our neighbors, that we should just open our doors to all these people, because who knows, one of them might be Jesus.
Yeah. I wonder if anybody asked him, so if I showed up at your house tonight, would you let me in and give me a place to sleep and feed me and so forth? They don't practice what they preach. Now, I will say that this passage, that it doesn't negate in any way our obligation to show Christian charity.
Absolutely.
It doesn't at the same time require that we place our own safety at risk by being so naive as to welcome everyone who wants to come across our border in without any questions asked.
So to wrap all this up, can you summarize kind of how we should think about these issues as Christians? Well,
we've done 2 episodes discussing Romans 13, our initial one, and then when we revisited it after receiving some listener feedback. So go back and listen to those episodes.
And those were episodes 134 and 138.
Excellent. But we have an obligation to abide by the rule of law. And we have many in our country who are saying, screw the law. We should open up our doors to any and everyone. First and foremost, that is not love for our neighbor, because it places people in this country at risk from those who wish to do us harm. Conversely, at the same time, just because somebody enters into the country illegally and are in all other ways decent, law-abiding people, at the same time we are to show them compassion. Of course, not compassion to the extent that we are placing ourselves at risk, but compassion to the extent that we do not treat them harshly, but we show them mercy. Mercy can be showed to people even in the midst of enforcing laws. It's also worth mentioning that it is not compassionate to those who are going through all the proper channels, to those who are spending their hard-earned money to go through the legal immigration channels. It's not very compassionate to them to let people jump in line and go right to the front of the line just because they snuck across our border.
Yep. Well, Pastor, I appreciate you taking the time to do this and to give us some perspective on this issue. Thank you for joining us again today.
You're welcome. And, of course, your listeners are free to disagree with my politics on this. But just to clarify, we do have an obligation as people of God to show compassion to those in need.
Absolutely. All right. For those of you who have any questions about this episode, any comments, got a topic or an article that you'd like us to review in a future episode, please visit our feedback page at armedlutheran.us/feedback. We would love to hear from you. Leave us an email or a voicemail or a voice message. Tune in again next time for another edition of Clinging to God and Guns right here on Armed Lutheran Radio.
John Bennett is the pastor at St. John's Lutheran Church in Willow Creek, Minnesota. For more information, visit stjohnswillowcreek.org.
And that's going to wrap it up for this week's show. Thank you all for listening, for downloading, for subscribing. Thank you to our fine sponsors who make all this possible. Thank you to my awesome cast of contributors. And thank you, dear listener, for listening, for downloading, for subscribing. I hope you'll join us again next week. Until then, keep shooting, keep praying. We'll talk to you next time.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Armed Lutheran Radio. For show notes, be sure to visit our website at www.armedlutheran.us. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher Radio, and TuneIn. This podcast is made possible by Cook's Holsters and contributions from listeners like you.